Too quick. Hello and welcome. My name is Ingrid Donnelly, Continuing Education Product Manager with IEEE. IEEE is the world's largest technical professional organization dedicated to advancing technology for the benefit of humanity. During these unprecedented times, I'd like to thank each of you for joining us today and wish you, your friends, and family well. IEEE members are on the front lines in the fight against COVID-19, developing technologies that are helping the world in this difficult time. To learn more about what IEEE members are doing in response to the pandemic, please click the Spectrum Magazine link in the Resources section. Before we begin, please note a few housekeeping items. At the bottom of your screen are engagement tools for your use. All tools are resizable and movable, so feel free to move them around to make the most out of your space. Note that we recommend using a wired internet connection to access today's presentation and closing all programs or browser sessions running in the background that could cause issues. There is no dial-in number for this event. Please make sure your computer speakers or headset are turned on and the volume is up so that you can hear our presenters. You can find additional answers to some common questions, technical issues, in the orange question mark help tool at the bottom of your screen. You can submit questions for today's presenters through the Q&A widget on your screen or by clicking the purple Q&A icon at the bottom of the screen. We will answer as many questions as time allows. If you click the green resources icon at the bottom of your screen, you'll find more information about today's events and future events. Please know an IEEE Certificate of Participation is available to all attendees. Click the certificate icon at the bottom of your screen to access. If you would like to tweet about this event, please use the hashtag IEEELearn. And finally, the on-demand link for today's event will be emailed to all registrants approximately 2 hours after today's session. Our virtual event today is Lessons in Leadership, Preparing the Future Leaders of Your Engineering Workforce. This virtual event will discuss how you can help your future leaders bridge the gap between business and engineering as they prepare for growth into management roles. The current climate presents a new opportunity to develop leaders within your organization. Being strategic is key in reimagining the future of your workforce. This shift requires strong leaders who can develop an understanding of what needs to change in a fast-paced environment. How do you identify these leaders? How do you ensure that leadership is a good fit? And what skills do these leaders often still need to develop? Today's presenters will offer a look at the process of identifying future leaders and equipping them with the skills they need for success. Today's presenters are Jenny Fine, Associate Director at Rutgers Business School, Executive Education, and Professor Braun Keese, Instructor of Professional Practice in Executive Education Management and Global Business. Unfortunately, our third presenter, Sohaib Sheikh, who recently completed the IEEE Rutgers Mini MBA, has fallen ill and is not able to join us today. We wish Sohaib a speedy recovery. At this time, I'd like to hand it over to Jenny.
Thank you, Ingrid. It's a real pleasure to be here today. As Ingrid introduced me, I'm the Associate Director of Executive Education at the Rutgers Business School, a role I've been in for about 9 years. And I really spend my time thinking about how organizations identify leaders and prepare them for the next steps in their career. And that is the focus of our presentation today. I know that these are disrupted times. People are working in different environments than they typically do. So I really appreciate your taking the time to join us today. I think you'll gain some good insights. And of course, we will have question and answer opportunities at the end. As we know, successful engineers tend to have a variety of common traits and characteristics. We often find that successful engineers are problem solvers, and in truth, I think the definition of engineering in recent years with the introduction of the concept of STEM, which is just a little bit of a different way of thinking about engineering, really does reframe the role of an engineer as a problem solver. And that requires being creative, being able to think out of the box, being resourceful. It also, of course, requires being analytical. What really is the problem and what type of solution might be best, and how do we develop potential solutions and choose from among them? Being logical, right, is a very rational way of thinking. Being attentive to details. Engineering certainly is a very detail-oriented discipline. We typically see that successful engineers do have mathematical ability and aptitude, and that they also have communication skills. So these are all some things that we typically know about successful engineers. I imagine that most people, when they think about this, would be able to identify these skills and these characteristics as common to successful engineers, perhaps with the exception of the last one on the list, communication skills. And one of the things that we're here to discuss today is how do you identify leaders among your technical workforce, and what are the skills that you would need to help them cultivate in order to be successful leaders and move into perhaps leadership or management roles. And communication skills, while maybe not the first thing we think of when we put together that list of characteristics of successful engineers, certainly is on the list. And in order to really be successful in any profession, in this day and age where we work with global and cross-disciplinary and multifunctional teams, communication skills are solidly on the list of what we need to be successful. Emerging leaders need some additional skills as well. It's wonderful to be a technical expert, to be an engineering whiz, to have that mathematical aptitude, to look at a problem, break it down, propose solutions, and evaluate them in a rational way. But in order to be a leader in your space, there are some additional skills as well. Certainly, that strong technical ability that we just mentioned. Project management skills come into play here as well. Perhaps individual contributors don't need to have super project management skills at a high level if they're working on maybe a small piece of a pie or one element of a project. But if you're going to be a leader, you do need to be able to manage projects. And that means managing the work, managing the processes, managing the timelines, the budgets, the resources, the flow. There's a lot that goes into project management. And in order to be a leader in your space, you do need to have some of those skills. Communication skills, as we already referenced, are certainly key as well. You need to be able to communicate clearly, which not only means putting out messages that others understand, but also being a good listener, understanding what other people are saying, sometimes understanding what other people are not saying, and perhaps being judicious about what you say and what you don't say. Communication is certainly a two-way street. We could do a whole presentation on communication skills for technical leaders. That might be a subject for a different day, but strong communication skills are essential for leadership in all disciplines, including engineering and technology areas. Tied in tightly with communication skills is emotional intelligence, being able to understand what makes other people tick, how they're motivated, what might be slowing them down or speeding them up, distracting them, what incentives work for people, what really compels people to excellence, that sort of emotional intelligence, understanding that team members have things going on outside of work and how does that affect their work, how do they like to be dealt with. Some people like to come to work and do their thing and don't really want to talk about their personal lives. Others want to come in every day and spend 10 minutes telling you about their dogs or their children or their parents or whatever else they have going on. And being a successful leader, drawing out the best in your team really does require strong emotional intelligence as well. Some people seem to innately have more emotional intelligence than others, but that is certainly a skill that can be cultivated as well and that needs to be cultivated in emerging leaders. Emerging leaders also really need to enjoy working with people. It's hard to be an effective leader if you're kind of annoyed by everybody around you, because you're really happy being an individual contributor. You like to work alone. You're independent. You're good at what you do. You enjoy doing it on your own. You don't really welcome the distraction or the collaboration. Different people have different styles, and that's fine. But successful leadership does involve some elements of actually being happy to work with others and to function on a team. Another area that emerging leaders really need to be aware of and cultivate is the ability to build bridges between teams. Because while you might be the leader of a team that's tasked with doing X, Y, and Z, chances are good if you're working in a sizable organization, you're going to be collaborating with the team leader that's charged with accomplishing A, B, and C to go along with your X, Y, and Z. So while you have direct responsibility for your tasks and your projects and your team and your programs and your priorities, someone somewhere else in your organization has their own team and responsibilities and tasks and priorities, but in some way they mesh with yours, depending on the organizational structure and the goals and the strategy of the company. So being able to build bridges between teams, work with other leaders, interact with perhaps contributors to other teams as well, where there might be crossover. Perhaps you need to work with each other to share best practices or pitfalls that you've encountered, to share resources or to allocate resources. Those are skills that are important as well for emerging leaders. You also have to be able to manage difficult problems. Difficult problems are part of everybody's work life, but the higher you rise through the management ranks or through the leadership ranks, the more complex and the more difficult the problems will become. Hand in hand with that is often the problems become higher stakes problems, and that is why it is important to be able to say, I can sort of scale up my problem-solving skills as I move up the ladder and as I gain additional responsibility. It's not necessarily just my task and how do I accomplish it and how do I surmount the problems that face me with my task. But now as you're a leader, you're responsible not only for your own tasks, but also those of your team members, which means that you're responsible for their problems and challenges as well. So understanding those problems, understanding perhaps how two contributors on your team might face similar challenges and what lessons you can learn from those, being able to apply solutions across multiple areas of a project, those are skills that emerging leaders will need as well. You also have to be self-reflective, right? In order to be a successful leader, you not only need to communicate with your team members and display emotional intelligence toward your team members, but you also need to be able to look at yourself and turn inward a little bit and say, here's where I'm doing a good job, and here's where I might need some improvement. My team seems to be really excellent at developing programs timelines or development timelines, but they're not so great at meeting the deadlines. They can develop a very detailed and realistic schedule, but then they're not sticking to the schedule. Is there something that I, as the leader, can do differently? Am I contributing to this? Do I miss my own deadlines? Am I not responsive to my team when they ask for my assistance or my input or my guidance? So the ability to not only provide the kinds of support and insight that your team needs, but to be able to turn that back in on yourself is also a characteristic of all leaders, and certainly something that emerging leaders need as well. And then the last, well, not the last thing, but the last element that we'll discuss today is that emerging leaders really need to be strategic thinkers. And that can be a very different perspective than individual contributors. When you are an individual contributor, you're responsible for yourself, your tasks, your projects, and you might not actually need to think that much about how it wraps into the bigger picture of your department, of your team, of your organization. But a leader needs to have not only that kind of narrower, what do we need to do and how will we do it perspective, but also the why are we doing this? What's the bigger picture? What's the bigger goal? What challenges might I face? If I accomplish this project in this narrower view, am I actually helping achieve the larger organizational goal? So that sort of strategic thinking, that bigger perspective, is something that leaders need as well. when you're evaluating your workforce to think about and to identify who might be a leader, you, of course, want to find among your human talent pool the people who do have the technical expertise and the skills, who have demonstrated that, the individuals who have some of those characteristics that we just discussed. But you also just want to evaluate, once you've found perhaps a pool of potential new leaders, is your potential leader more interested in increasingly complex opportunities to be an individual contributor? Meaning, do they really want to be a leader, or are they happy to just have more responsibility in their role as an individual contributor? Maybe they get the bigger projects or the higher stakes projects. Maybe they get involved with the products that bring more revenue into the company. Is that really what they're interested in? Still working on an individual level, but perhaps with additional responsibilities and additional opportunities? Or are they interested in the big picture, right? You might identify someone who has the technical expertise and the skills to be a leader, but you need to be sure that person wants to be a leader. Do they like interacting with people? Do they want to lead people? Do they shape the direction of the company and help achieve its goals? Sometimes you'll find people who are promoted to a management role from a technical role, and they find they really miss doing the brass tacks technical work. In another application, in another industry, just to take a step back, sometimes you'll find that very effective classroom teachers are promoted into positions of educational administration. But it turns out they don't really want to be administrators. They don't want to be the principal negotiating with the textbook companies. They want to teach the kids. So there's something comparable that we can find in a technical organization as well. Do your workforce that you have identified as potentially effective leaders want to go down that road? And that's really the first thing you need to evaluate when you are identifying potential new leaders. Is this new career direction of interest to them? It's a good idea within any organization to have multiple paths to success and advancement. So you might have a very successful contributor who you think would be a good emerging leader, but they're not interested in leadership. When you discuss it with them, they want to be solving the problems, be working in that slightly narrower view. That shouldn't limit their opportunity to advance within your organization or to be valued or to move up in some way. So it is important to have paths to career growth, both for your successful workforce that wants to take that step and move perhaps from contributor to manager or contributor to leader, but also those who want to still be that technician, for lack of a better term, but perhaps with additional responsibility or larger opportunities. So that's something to think about as you're thinking about your own either succession planning or development plans, that concept that there should be more than one path to growth and achievement within your organization. And those paths might be a technical path, a leadership path. That's something that each organization needs to determine individually, but definitely something to consider as you plot out career paths for your teams. We're going to pause here and take a moment and just do a brief poll. Let's see how you identify emerging leaders in your organization. You can just click the button for the one that best matches your situation, promoting people who have strong technical skills, promoting people that others enjoy working with, promoting people who have had good success, demonstrated success, and then not hiring from within. Perhaps you do not promote internally, but you bring people in from the outside into your leadership roles. So I'll pause for a moment, give you an opportunity to choose the answer that best reflects your reality. Okay, and let's take a look and see where we net out here. So it looks as though most people have indicated, a strong majority have indicated, that in your organization you promote people who have had strong success on projects. So that means the people who are good at what they do from the engineering and technical product or development perspective are the ones who get promoted. That's very typical. That doesn't surprise me. And I think it's reflective of what we've just talked about, that you might need more than one career path. Maybe that is the main career path in your organization. You're good at what you do, and you're so good you maybe get promoted out of doing it and get promoted into leading it. So that's a wonderful career path, perhaps not the only one. I am happy to see that we do not hire from within has a very poor showing here, and that most of your organizations do have opportunities to move forward and to really grow your career, that you're not bringing in managers from elsewhere. And then it seems that many people get promoted in your organizations when others enjoy working with them, actually more than the promotions that we see for people who have strong technical skills, which tells us something about what we really perceive to be the main elements for success in a leadership role, having more to do with the people skills, perhaps what we call the soft skills, than with the technical skills. So thank you for your input there. What we're looking at here is the same list that we saw earlier, where we see some characteristics of successful engineers. But as we've been saying, if you want to develop your technical professionals into successful leaders, they do need to be offered some additional skill sets. They need to cultivate and gain some additional skills, perhaps some of which they have already, perhaps some of which they don't, or in varying degrees. And those skills really are the ones that help you bridge the gap between business and engineering, because of course being a team leader requires, as we said, that more strategic thought process, that bigger picture, the understanding. What are the overall goals of this organization, and how is my team working on its projects and its products going to filter up into that? It's an upward perspective. And that gap between business and engineering is very common and exists pretty much in every large or mid-size, or arguably even very small technical or engineering organization. And that's really where the focus needs to be. There's the technical side, there's the business side, and if I want to move people who've been successful technically into the business side, how do I make sure that they're primed for success? There are many, many things that a successful leader will need to have, but what I've listed here are some that, with a lot of thought and a lot of experience in developing workforces, that my organization has kind of distilled into what are some of the business skills, the operational skills that an engineering leader would need. So the first one is really the understanding of business strategy. Where does the organization want to go? How is it going to get there? Then we have financial management. Obviously, most businesses are around to make money. Economics, which really is almost global and tied into politics. Certainly, we're seeing the world economy shaking today in a way we would not have predicted 2 months ago. So understanding how the global economy affects your business, how does it affect your investments? How does it affect your capital resources? How might it affect your workforce, your supply chain, your distribution channels? All of that can be seen through the lens of sort of a global economic perspective. For most technical organizations, intellectual property strategy is a big deal. For those of you who don't work with that directly, it is quite likely that if you start asking questions at your organization, you'll find that there are many people in your legal department, perhaps depending on the size of your company, who spend their time thinking about intellectual property. How do we secure our intellectual property? What happens when our patents expire? What happens if our competition wants to do something that's just similar, that's very similar, but just different enough to not be an issue with intellectual property? What if one of my engineers goes to work somewhere else? These are all things that tie into intellectual property, and that is a major operational consideration for technology companies. Managing new product development. How do we decide what to develop? Who's going to develop it? What if we have two very similar products and we're not sure which one we can develop more effectively or more efficiently? Do we start with both? How far do we get down the road before we pull back from one and proceed with another and reallocate our resources? Are we launching extensions to product lines, or are we launching new product lines? How do we manage our new product development? Do we have new teams? Do we assign new products to existing teams? These are all strategic questions tied into those business and operational skills that leaders will need. Negotiations. We all negotiate all day, every day. Negotiations can be, my son just asked for an increase to his allowance. He came to me. He had a whole speech. He had made little index cards. That's a negotiation. Negotiating your salary. Negotiating how many team members you have. This is my team. You're telling me that these are our goals and our priorities, and this is the timeline. I think I need one more software engineer. How do you negotiate that? Office space, distribution channels, sales commissions, compensation structures. These are all things that need to be worked out, and leaders need to be able to negotiate effectively. That is not necessarily a skill that comes easily to people or naturally, but there are skills that can be taught. Sales and marketing is often a black hole to technology professionals. The first question I get asked all the time is, well, what's the difference between sales and marketing? What do they both do? How do they work together? What's the difference? So these are areas, very important functional areas. You can develop the best products in the world, but if there's no one to market them and there's no one to sell them, you won't get too far. So as a team leader, you do need to have a strong understanding of sales and marketing, even if your team is not working with that directly. Business ventures and innovation is related to new product development, understanding how you innovate new products, understanding how you think totally differently, is also something that ties into that need for strategic thinking and that big picture. Leadership, of course, is huge and is really the crux of what we're talking about. Leadership is really the ability to drive a team towards success by motivating them in some way. And there are many different styles of leadership. There are different communication styles. Understanding that, this very much ties into some of what we talked about earlier with emotional intelligence, communications. This as well is something where you can develop your leadership abilities by working at it. And there's a lot of education, a lot of theory, and a lot of practice around leadership standards. Customer experience is something that I don't think we even talked about 5 years ago. 10 years ago, probably no one even knew what that really meant. Customer experience is really the outward focus on what am I doing, right? So I'm developing new products, I'm marketing them, I have a sales team. But what is the customer experiencing? What's happening from the consumer perspective? And it's not just a finite or a discrete experience. It's really more about relationship, right? In sort of the olden days, we thought of sales, as an example, as a very transactional experience. You buy something from me, you have this thing, you go home, and I go home. The next time you need to buy something, hopefully you'll come back because hopefully you liked what I sold you and you liked me and you liked working with me. But it was still a very transactional give and take kinds of transaction or kinds of experience. Now we know that there's sort of a life cycle of a customer. A happy customer is likely to come back. A happy customer is likely to refer us to somebody else. A longtime happy customer who has one bad experience might be willing to overlook that or forgive it, as opposed to someone who bought something from us once, didn't like it, couldn't reach me on the phone, didn't get a replacement in time, and says, I'm never doing business with them again. So customer experience is something that we think about more and more as the concept of the give and take between the provider and the consumer has turned into something much more relationship-based and relational rather than transactional. So these are all skills that technology professionals need in order to become leaders that they might not have used in their roles as individual contributors. And it's really important to be mindful that we need to equip our emerging leaders with these skills if we want them to succeed. We're going to pause here, and I have another poll displayed here. I'm really curious, from the group we have on the call, where do you find the biggest gaps between in your current emerging leaders? Where are the areas that your emerging leaders are perhaps the weakest or need the most skill development? Is it business strategy, financial management, economics, intellectual property, managing new product development, negotiations, sales and marketing, business ventures and innovation, leadership, or customer experience? This is a list that ties back to all the areas we just talked about, and I'm really curious where you find the biggest gaps to be with your current next generation leaders. So let's pause here for a moment. I know it might be hard to pick just one, but I will ask you to pick where you think really the largest gap exists. Okay, let's take a look at what came in. Okay, business strategy. Looks like there's a pretty large gap, just about 18%. Taking a look. Leadership actually exceeds that. I'm not totally surprised by that. Leadership is a difficult skill. And it is something that can and should be cultivated. And really, you can have the strongest technical skills in the world, but you will not be an effective leader if your leadership skills themselves are flagging. You won't be able to gain consensus for your team. They won't be motivated to do their best. They won't understand how their work fits into the big picture, so it therefore becomes less important somehow. So leadership, which is all those sort of soft skills that we talked about, is really the most important. I'm sorry, I'm looking at the chat. It looks as though some people couldn't see the results, so I'm just going to scroll back through them super quickly. Business strategy at the top has a pretty high representation, financial management, and then scrolling down, we'll see that leadership does have the most votes for the largest gap. So thank you for sharing that insight. I'm not totally surprised, but it is important to see how that falls out. Now that we've identified what the skills are that your leaders will need to be effective leaders, especially if they're moving from technical contributor roles, engineering contributor roles, to leadership, let's talk a little bit about how you can plan for this development, right? You can plan for anything, and then hopefully you can execute it. So let's talk about that. So the first thing you need to do, which I think we've talked about, is identify the skills of your most effective emerging leaders. What are the skills they have now? And then we can identify where is the gap, right? You can do sort of an analysis. These are the skills that we need to have. These are the skills that we do have. Which ones are on both lists? Let's cross those off and not focus for those in the immediate term. Let's see where the gaps are. It's very important not only that you assess this gap, but that you have your emerging leaders, your potential leaders, assess this gap as well. This ties into the ability to be self-reflective. If you have a potential leader who says with 100% confidence, I can do everything, I have no gaps in my knowledge, I will step into my leadership role on day one and be 200% effective, maybe something is not quite right, and maybe that person lacks a little bit of the ability to be self-reflective, which is important for new leaders. Nobody can move from one role to another, particularly from a technical individual contributor role to a leadership role, without having some new skill set that they need to gain. It might not be a huge leap or a huge gap. It might be very easily remedied, but there likely is some gap. So it's a little bit of a red flag for a potential new leader to say, I'm good. I don't need anything. I have nothing to learn. I have nothing to develop. I was born for this. I can step right into it. So just be aware of that and try to have a self-assessment as part of this process as well. Then you can identify the business skills that can be learned in-house. Maybe you have some formal courses. Maybe you give webinars like this. Maybe you have a coaching or a mentoring program. So other leaders who came from technical, engineering, individual contributor roles and move successfully to leadership roles can mentor or can give leadership preparation classes or managerial coaching classes. Maybe you have an internal resource of one kind or another, whether it's some sort of instruction or hand-holding, that can help these leaders gain the skills that they need to in a very internal, real-world way. It is also possible that you'll need outside resources to round out the picture, and that's fine. Many organizations don't have the in-house development expertise or resources to meet all their own development needs all the time, and that's perfectly fine. And there are a lot of external resources for providing skills and development. So once you've identified what you have in-house, whether it's some sort of instruction or more of a relationship coaching situation, then you might say, okay, we still have this gap that we need to fill. Let's look outside our own walls to see what resource we can find and how we can meet that need. When you look outside your company, you'll find that there are a variety of sort of categories, I would say, of skills training or development. The first is self-study. So self-study might mean, here's a book on leadership. Go read it. Self-study might mean, here is a YouTube channel with some leadership training or some coaching. Watch these series of videos, take the quizzes at the ends of them, and that will help you develop your skills. It might mean taking courses that are available through Coursera, through LinkedIn Learning, which some of you might know is lynda.com. It's now LinkedIn Learning. It might mean that you're reading blogs. There are a lot of resources in our very connected global online universe that can provide leadership development of one kind or another. And you might say to your potential leaders, either go find some resources that you're interested in, or here's a recommended list. Make your way through these, and this will help develop your skill set. That's one option, self-study. Another option ties back to what we spoke about a moment ago with internally created courses taught by existing staff or HR personnel. Maybe you have a group of contributors who are all moving to leadership roles at the same time, and you realize, my organization does a lot of training, we have a lot of development, we have coaches and trainers in our learning and development department. We're going to develop a course, and that's fine. You can kind of start from scratch. You know what the priorities are of your organization. You can schedule things the way you want to. You can deliver them the way you want to. Maybe you create something new. That's another option. And then a third option is to find an educational provider, an institution of some kind. There are, of course, nonprofit educational institutions. There are for-profit educational institutions. But there's no shortage of educational institutions. And if you're looking for leadership training, you might say, we're going to find a formal, structured, developed program that's offered by a third party, and we want it to be academically rigorous. And we want to make sure that it really meets all of our needs and is consistent for all of our leaders. So those are sort of three options for leadership training from if you realize you don't have what you need right now in-house. One is self-study, one is creating something in-house, and one is looking to an outside educational provider. This is going to lead me to discussing the mini MBA for engineers and technology managers. As we mentioned earlier, I'm with Rutgers University, which is the State University of New Jersey. We're one of the largest universities in the country. And I'm with the Business School, which is a very large business school as well. We're a large public business school. And I'm in the Executive Education Department, where we develop various training opportunities and various development courses, certificate programs, educational programming for professionals. Most people who take our courses are working professionals who have between 10 and 20 years of experience and either want to learn something new, refresh their skills, gain a new credential, and they come to us because they like that the academic rigor of a university is behind their learning. We offer a program, we offer many programs that fall under the category of a mini MBA. A mini MBA is fundamentally a certificate program, and we offer them in a variety of different disciplines. What we'll focus on today is the mini MBA for engineers that we offer. This program has been run for quite a long time, and we run it in an online format, and I'll tell you a little bit about that. This is a fully self-paced online course developed specifically for engineers and technology professionals. We do, as I said, offer many mini MBAs. Many of them are discipline-specific or industry-specific. So, for example, I run another program in biopharma innovation that's for life science professionals. We have another mini MBA in digital marketing that's for marketing professionals. So this course is very tightly and very specifically designed for engineering and technology professionals. It's an entirely online, very flexible format. The faculty in this course are all business school faculty and industry experts, and in many cases they are both business school faculty and industry experts. I really have yet to meet a faculty member at Rutgers who does not have a foot in the industry world, in the business world, as well. We're not in an ivory tower here at Rutgers. We're out in the real world, and it's a really nice hybrid. So the faculty who developed this course with me and who present the course understand certainly the technical background. Many of them are engineers themselves, but also really have a lot of strong, solid industry, business, operational experience. Sometimes with an online course, you lack the opportunity to interact with the instructors, with the faculty, and with your fellow learners, which is unfortunate. Within this mini MBA, even though the course is fully online, we have what we call virtual office hours, and these are weekly call-in sessions where you can actually ask questions. The faculty member is on the phone, or it's a web-based session. You can ask questions. You can gain additional insights. The instructors always have something new to offer, and then you can interact with your fellow learners as well. We also offer online discussion boards, so learners can just have conversations, share their insights, their challenges, what's worked for them, perhaps some real-world examples of what they're learning and how it applies to their responsibilities. So though it is an online class, we do have the opportunity to interact, learner to learner and learner to faculty as well within our course. The mini MBA covers 10 topics that map very closely to some of those lists of skills that we saw earlier. And each topic has a few different instructional elements. For each topic, there are some readings that you do. The readings typically are fairly brief, and they're kind of corollary to the main presentations from the faculty members. We have some learners who want to skim the readings, don't do them so carefully, save them for the end, and that's okay. They will still understand the faculty-led presentation, but they are readings that are valuable and that really sort of prime the pump and get you in the mood and expose you at a very foundational level to what's coming up in the presentations for that topic. Each topic also has a series of on-demand videos. This is the faculty-led instruction. We actually have a relatively new video studio at Rutgers Business School. I've spent a lot of time there. We re-recorded this entire course in the past 6 months in the video studio. The production value is very high. The videos are easy to watch. They're broken into segments, so you don't have to watch 3 hours of video at one time if you don't want to. So the on-demand videos are very flexible in the way you access them, and really, a high production value and easy to watch as well. And then we have some assessments for each topic in addition. We have some quizzes for each topic. They're brief. They're not intimidating. It's really just a learning tool to make sure that you've mastered the main topics within that section. And then even within the videos, at times the instructor will say, pause the video and go do this. We just talked about this. Now go do this little activity or exercise, again, to reinforce and apply your learning sort of in the moment. So it's a very robust but flexible and on-demand educational experience. To wrap up the learning and to actually earn the mini MBA credential, learners have 2 requirements. One is a final exam and one is a capstone project. The final exam is an online multiple choice exam. It takes most people less than an hour. We give people 2 hours to take it so that there's a nice cushion there. And then there's also a capstone project, which is a written project that you submit, and a faculty member actually grades it and provides not only a letter or a number grade, but as well some pretty extensive qualitative feedback. The capstone project is designed to help you really apply your learning in a real-world fashion to a real-world problem or situation, and we'll talk more about that in a moment. If an organization decides that it would like to put a cohort or a group of learners through the mini MBA together, which is a really valuable shared learning experience for a variety of reasons, then that sponsor at the organization, whether it's a functional department, human resources, learning and development, whoever it is, will get reports along the way of academic progress, and then they will also get feedback from the learners that we gather on their perceived value of the program. When we have a corporate cohort taking the course, that client or that sponsor at the organization is able to really gain kind of real-time feedback from some tools that we have built in about how the learning is going. And that way, if we need to make small adjustments along the way, we can do that, and we don't have to kind of wait till the program is over, get feedback at the very end and then say, oh, you know what, if we had known this, we would have pivoted in this way or that way. So that's a nice resource for sponsors at a corporate level. As we can see here, the topics in the online mini MBA are those that we had referenced earlier as where the skills gaps might be or the skills that are needed for technical professionals to move into management roles. If you are an organization that is looking to develop these management skills for your engineers, this mini MBA might be a good solution for you. It really was developed to help corporate employees bridge the gap, as we said before, between business and engineering as they prepare for their growth into management roles. So if you are at an organization that is looking to promote from within, take people who've had technical success and reward them with the move into a leadership role, if you want to be organized about that and consistent and provide that portion of your workforce with the skills they need for their personal success, which of course ties into your organizational success, then you might want to think about a program such as this, and that need is exactly how and why this program was developed. If you start Googling around after the session is over later today, mini MBA, online mini MBA, you might find that there are other programs that use that language and that vocabulary. I can tell you that this is the only mini MBA program specifically designed for engineers. And what that means is that even though some of the topics that we cover might be relevant for every industry, right? Let's say a marketing professional being promoted to a management role also might need some of those skills, might not know much about intellectual property strategy or negotiations. That's true. And we do cover those topics in more than one program, but this mini MBA for engineers is really the only one of its kind, and everything that we talk about in this course is through that perspective, the case studies, the readings, the assignments, the window that we look through, so to speak, to discuss all of these topics is that engineering and technology perspective. So you will not have a case study, for example, about Heinz ketchup in the course for mini MBA, though you might have it in a course on supply chain. Okay, so this really is designed specifically for this particular group of professionals. It's a very niche, specialized program. By the time learners have finished the online mini MBA, they will have accomplished many goals, which we can sort of put into three buckets. The first is to discern how organizational decisions are made with both technical and operational considerations. So this is really introducing that business, strategic, operational perspective to your leaders to help them better understand how the organization makes its decisions and why, and help them make decisions at their own level, on their own team field, so to speak, that tie into those organizational larger perspectives. They will also understand how different functional groups operate together to achieve organizational goals. So as we said before, you might know that your organization has a large legal department, but you don't really know what they do. And you might know that your organization has a sales department and a marketing department, but you don't know what the difference is. By the time you're done with this course, you'll understand what all those roles and functions are at an organization and how they work together and how you can help them work together more effectively to meet those individual team and organizational goals again. And then the last thing is that they'll really be able to see how the business skills line up with the technical skills so that they can really, again, contribute to that overall business strategy, right? You might know what your skills are from a technical perspective of your team, but having that business perspective allows you to see it a little differently, perhaps allocate resources differently, communicate with people differently, set your projects up differently with that strategic perspective kind of lined up next to the technical perspective. So you really walk away from this course with a very strong understanding of business and operational considerations to go along with your very significant and important and essential technical expertise. Just a couple more highlights of the program. The course curriculum was developed in conjunction with subject matter experts at the IEEE. One thing we know at Rutgers Business School, executive education, is that we don't have all the answers ourselves on our own team. So we turned to our faculty, and we also turned to our partners, and we really did develop this course very closely with subject matter experts at the IEEE to make sure that we were developing the right course to exactly identify the needs of the majority of their customer base. It is a very convenient, self-paced format. The course can be 15 weeks. It can be shorter. When a corporate sponsor signs up and decides to put a group through, there are some decisions that the organization can make, the length of the program, what constitutes a passing grade for the program, things of that nature. But however the organization decides the timing should be and the requirements, it is fundamentally an online, self-paced, very flexible program. And of course, the instruction is the same, so you really do have that expert-led instruction, as well as those opportunities for peer interaction with the office hours and the discussion boards. And then, as we said, all of these learning tools wrap up with the final exam and the capstone project to help you maintain the work-life balance that you need. You might have a group of people who are going to take this course, and they might say, but hey, I can't do this every Monday afternoon from 2 o'clock to 5 o'clock. I have another commitment on Monday from 2 o'clock to 5. And that is why we developed it to be such a flexible schedule, because we know people have a lot going on. You might have 10 people who need these skills, or 20 people, or 30 people, but that doesn't mean they have the same schedule. So this is developed specifically to help provide that kind of work-life balance individually for each learner. I'm going to move through to the next slide. I would like to talk for a moment about the capstone project. As the IEEE has talked to prospective customers about this, and in my experience as well, often the capstone project is the most exciting part of the program for corporate sponsors. It's a written project that really helps the learners synthesize their learning from the whole curriculum. Any learner looking at these 10 topics that we cover will say, you know what, turns out I do know a lot about intellectual property strategy, so that doesn't really resonate as much with me. However, I don't know anything about supply chain, and I hear a lot of talk about customer experience, but I don't really know what that means in my life or in my role. So you'll have topics that are brand new to people, topics that are a little familiar to people, and sometimes topics that are very familiar, a couple here and there, to some of your learners. The capstone project has them pull it all together so that they really gain this holistic view based on the curriculum. The learners are presented with a real-world challenge, almost like a fact pattern. Here's a set of circumstances or a situation that an organization finds itself in. Now you, as the learner, having made your way through this course, need to present some solutions, and you need to justify them based on your learning. That's fundamentally what the capstone project is. It's presenting solutions to a problem or to a challenge and justifying them and backing them up based on what you've learned. The submissions by learners can be in Word or PowerPoint. Some people love to work in one. Some people prefer to work in the other. That's fine. And then a faculty member from our program, as I mentioned earlier, actually grades the project and then provides some qualitative feedback as well. This is a very valuable tool for the learner individually. At an organizational level, it can also be very valuable for whoever has kind of sponsored the program for a cohort, again, whether it's a functional unit, whether it's HR, learning and development, because as the sponsor, you can see all of the submissions from all of your learners, and you can kind of see what skills they've gained. There is opportunity to customize the capstone project, so you might actually want to present them with the problem or the challenge and see what kinds of solutions come back in. So there's not only the individual benefit of this project, but there's also the organizational benefit. I'm going to turn things over now to Professor Braun Keith, who I'm delighted is on the phone with us. Professor Keith and I work quite closely together on a variety of different programming areas, but one of which that's really close to our hearts is this program for engineers. And he leads the section on business ventures and innovation. And Professor Keith, I'm going to ask you to take us through a little more detail on that, just to provide an example of kind of the level of instruction and the types of topics and perspective that learners encounter.
Sure, no problem. Thanks so much, Jenny. Hi, everyone. My name is Professor Keith, and it's my pleasure to join you this afternoon. So yeah, this module I'm really excited about. It represents some of my kind of most recent work at Rutgers. And just to give you a little bit of background, I am, as Jenny mentioned, I think one of the great things about the mini MBA program is that the courses and the modules are taught by practitioners. So while I do sort of have one toe in academia, I'm very much a practitioner involved in a number of different companies from from startup to sort of mid-market size, and I'm out there sort of every day putting these concepts and tools sort of into practice and learning in the marketplace, and then sort of coming back to the classroom to share that with everyone. So that's something I really enjoy. But this module is really all about how we get something from an idea to commercialization. So how do we go about taking an innovation that the organization has either invented or is thinking of purchasing or acquiring or licensing, and getting that sort of from the lab to successful commercialization. And so here, what we really look, or what I look to share with everyone, is why it is that oftentimes good managers and good engineers, for that matter, are also very bad innovators. They're very bad at successfully commercializing new products and new ideas. So, and if I remember the results from the survey Jenny took earlier, I think there was, I think it was about 25% in total. About 12.5% felt that they were lacking in new product development, managing the new product development process, and another, I think, roughly 10% commented on innovation. And so combined, we've got about 25% that this, I think, this module really seeks to address. So, so in there, what we'll really learn to do is sort of build a toolbox for you, and we explore the reasons why a lot of the tools that are used to make people good managers and good engineers don't necessarily make them very good innovators. And then to address that problem, we explore some new tools and concepts that we can utilize, right, to solve that issue. So we explore things like the innovator's method and lean startup principles, and learn how to sort of apply these rubrics to more successfully developing new products and commercializing ideas. We cover a lot of great concepts. So we talk about disruptive innovation, open innovation, lean and agile methodologies. I also present to you a framework for your evaluation that you could use potentially to determine if an innovation is a good fit or not for your organization, and whether or not it's going to create long-term value for the organization. So sort of a way to evaluate, right, new concepts. Some of the key takeaways from this module, by the time we're done with our time together, I think you'll have a good idea, just fundamentally how value is created. So, how do we go about creating value in a new idea or a new invention, and also some insight as to how then to capture that value once it is created, right? Because once we actually commercialize the product, then we've got to get to the market and actually go out there and capture, right, that value from the market. So the first challenge is getting the product to the market, and then the next challenge is capturing the value in the marketplace. So we touch on both of those. We look at really the differences between the skill sets needed to create value and the skill sets needed to capture value. As you see, there's a lot of the capturing part tends to lend itself towards more traditional business school topics such as strategy and finance and marketing. The creation of value has to do more with a lot of the concepts we cover in this module. So, but we clearly can sort of delineate those two, and I give some great, I think, real-world examples of that. As I mentioned, you'll also know how to apply concepts like the innovator's method and lean startup principles. We'll talk quite a bit about risk. And how risk is sort of critical, or the mitigation of risk, I should say, is critical to building value, and how, right, we might think about analyzing the risk in new ideas and new innovations, and most importantly, how we might think about mitigating those risks. So again, we cover some key concepts, right, disruptive and open innovation, and really, that framework too for evaluating sort of if an innovation or a new idea is a good fit for the organization as a whole. So I think it's a really fun module to teach. I think it's really engaging and has a lot of concepts that people can relate to, and so it's been my pleasure to sort of create this module for everyone, and I look forward to hopefully working with some of you in the future. at that point, I'm going to turn it back over to Jenny.
Thank you. I know we're coming up on time. I have a lot to say about this topic, so I apologize if I went on for a moment or two too long. I do just want to wrap up by talking about what the mini MBA can do for an organization. I think we've established what it can do for learners. It provides some consistency in learning. So if you do have a group of people at the same time or just on some sort of rotation or through your natural cycle of HR and growth, you are often looking to promote people or to move people into leadership roles. Putting them through the same learning experience provides them with consistency in learning, which ultimately leads to more effective collaboration and communication. They have a common vocabulary and a common experience. We also offer learning touchstones. I referenced this earlier. We have some tools that we can use to capture feedback from your learners as the course goes on at regular intervals, so you can see what they're finding most impactful, what means the most to them. It provides some learner accountability because we have the reporting for groups that are coming through together with the same sponsor. We can really make sure everyone is on track and on task, and if not, help people sort of correct their course. And then it does also provide some camaraderie. It makes people feel they're part of a team. I'm not the only one who's moving to a new role who has a gap in skill, who's addressing it in this manner. There are others like me, and it creates that nice feeling of collaboration and camaraderie, and perhaps deflects some feeling of, wait, maybe I'm not quite ready for this, or they don't really trust me. If everybody who's in that position of moving from one type of role to another is moving through the same learning experience themselves. So I really thank you for your time today. It was a pleasure to talk with you. I hope that you learned a lot and gained some additional insight. You have some food for thought. And I'm going to turn it back over to Ingrid for some brief questions and answers. Thank you, everybody. Did we have some questions come in from the group that we want to address now? Ingrid, Amy?
Yep, this is Amy. I'm going to jump in here. So yes, we did have a lot of questions come in, so thank you to everyone for that. I think we have time for just maybe one or two, so let me just see what I can grab here. So, okay. This question, and I'm going to try to group together a couple of the questions that we have together regarding accreditation and how is this program accredited? Is there any accreditation related to it?
Sure. So Rutgers Business School is, of course, an accredited institution of higher education, and we are also a member of a consortium of graduate schools of business. When you take the mini MBA, you earn a mini MBA credential, which is issued by the Rutgers Business School Executive Education Department, and that's what you would list on your resume or your CV or your LinkedIn profile. You earned a mini MBA for engineers and technology managers. It also carries some academic graduate credit with it. With the mini MBA, you earn what we call a 3-credit waiver. That means that if at some later point you go into a Rutgers Business School graduate program, whether it's an MBA program, an executive MBA, we offer some specialty master's programs as well. With this credit waiver, that sort of comes hand in hand with the mini MBA credential, you can actually opt out of a 3-credit elective course in one of our graduate programs. So for people who are considering going back to graduate school and aren't quite sure, this is a good way to kind of dip your toe in the water, test yourself, remind yourself what learning is like, in an academic institution, get that independent credential of the mini MBA, but also be able to then carry the credit forward into a degree program. We also recently started issuing digital badges. This is a relatively new concept in professional development and professional education. We work with a partner called Acclaim that verifies the academic integrity of programs, educational programming, and then you can have this digital badge which you can share on your social media platforms, on your LinkedIn. It's just another way of kind of verifying that you successfully completed this, this rigorous academic experience.
Okay, great. Thank you. I think we'll squeeze in one more question
Sure.
before we wrap up for the day. So again, I'm trying to combine a couple of questions together. So if folks attending today are interested in this program, who do you suggest that they talk to at their company? Is there a particular role or a certain type of position they should seek out to kind of get the ball rolling on being involved in this program?
So I find that at different organizations, different departments or different groups kind of have responsibility for this kind of program. I would start with HR, and if you have a learning and development department within HR, some organizations have that. If they're large organizations, some might not. But I would start with someone in HR, and if you can find someone who's responsible for learning and development, that's probably a good first line of defense. And if you're really not sure, you can always discuss it with your own team leader, with your own manager, and try to find out, who might be responsible within your organization for learning opportunities. You're welcome to reach out to me, and I can try to direct you either to one of my partners at the IEEE to see where those relationships are to help steer you in the right direction as well.
Okay, so thank you, Amy. Thank you, Jenny. We invite you to learn more about the IEEE Rutgers Online Mini MBA program for engineers. As noted earlier, the on-demand link for today's event will be emailed to all registrants in approximately 2 hours. Don't forget to complete our feedback survey via the teal survey tool at the bottom of your screen. Please join us for our next event, which actually is taking place tomorrow at 1 p.m., How to Enhance Your E-Curriculum for Distance Learners with E-Resources, featuring perspectives from a librarian, professor, and publisher. Also, I did want to note, for some of you who have additional questions, we have included the Rutgers brochure. It does include some information that Sohaib was planning to share today, as well as any additional information that we may not have been able to cover in the Q&A portion. Please know we'll try to continue to go through some of those questions, answers to get back to you, but we want to thank you today for joining us, and I wish all of you well.